Before we dive into this unbelievable story of betrayal, if you're new here, welcome to Karma Chronicles. We share stories about deception and the moments justice is served. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. For 10 years, I thought our marriage was solid. I really believed in the life we were building, the future we'd planned, and the woman I came home to every night. Clara wasn't just my wife. She was my partner, my best friend. I always thought betrayal was something that happened in movies, not something that could ever happen to me. But one Tuesday afternoon, a single email I was never meant to see showed me the truth. She wasn't just unhappy, she was planning her escape. She was building an entirely new life on the ashes of ours before I even knew there was a fire. And once I started connecting the dots, I realized the warning signs had been there all along, hiding in plain sight. This is the story of how I found out my wife was living a double life, how I uncovered her meticulous plan to leave me with nothing, and what I did when I realized the last decade of my life might have been a complete lie. If you've ever felt the sting of betrayal, stick around. You're going to want to hear how this ends. It's strange looking back now, seeing everything through the lens of what I know today. It's like watching a movie for the second time. You suddenly see all the clues you missed the first time around. For 10 years, I was watching the first run, completely oblivious. Clara and I met in our early 20s. It was a classic story, mutual friends, a party, and an instant connection that just felt different. She had a laugh that could fill a room and a way of making you feel like you were the only person in it. We fell in love, fast and hard. Our life together felt like a project we were both equally invested in. We were a team. We bought a small apartment, celebrated each other's promotions, mourned the loss of my father. We held each other through everything. When we bought our house, 5 years into our marriage, it felt like we were laying the foundation for forever. Our friends saw us as the stable ones, the couple that proved it could really work. We had our routines, lazy Sunday mornings, Friday night pizza, and our annual trip to the coast. We talked about everything, or so I thought. We planned our future, joking about where we'd travel when the mortgage was paid off and how we'd spoil our grandkids someday. I never felt a single crack in our foundation. Sure, we had arguments like any couple. We'd bicker about chores or whose turn it was to take out the overflowing recycling. But they were just small storms on a huge, calm ocean. They always ended with a hug and the quiet understanding that we were on the same side. I supported her career, even when it meant long hours and a lot of travel for her. I picked up the slack at home and handled our finances, not because she couldn't, but because I was good at it and she hated it. It was our system. It worked. I loved her, and I believed with every fiber of my being that she loved me back. I was proud of the man I was with her, a devoted, supportive husband. The problem, I would soon find out, was that I was the only one living in our marriage. The woman sleeping next to me was living in a totally different reality, one where I was just an obstacle to be managed and, eventually, removed. Looking back, the signs were so obvious. They were like a string of blinking red lights on a dark road. But at the time, my mind did incredible gymnastics to explain them all away, to make them fit into the story of the happy marriage I so desperately wanted to believe in. It started subtly, about a year before everything blew up. Clara went on this massive self-improvement kick. She started working out constantly and even hired a personal trainer. Her entire wardrobe changed. I remember telling my friends how great she looked and how proud I was. I thought she was doing it for herself, for her own confidence. It never once crossed my mind that she might be getting ready for the singles market. Then our communication just dried up. The deep talks that used to be the bedrock of our relationship vanished. Our conversations became totally transactional. Did you pay the electric bill? I'll be late, don't wait up. The chats about our future and our dreams just stopped. If I tried to plan a vacation, she'd be vague, blaming her busy work schedule. Any talk of long-term financial planning, something we used to do together, was completely shut down. I just told myself we were in a rut, that this was just a comfortable, maybe boring, phase of a long marriage. Her phone became glued to her hand. It was always with her and always face down on the table. She changed her password, claiming it was for new security protocols at work. I, the guy who prided himself on trust, never questioned it. I didn't want to be that husband. ND, but she was texting constantly, often with a little secret smile that wasn't for me. The detailed family phone bill I used to manage. Suddenly, it was switched to a paperless, password-protected online version I couldn't access. But maybe the worst sign, the one that shows how deep the planning went, was the change in her parenting. Clara had always been a loving but pretty hands-off mom. Suddenly, she was planning all these special one-on-one weekend trips with our two kids, trips that I was pointedly not invited on. She started taking over duties she'd rarely touched, like cooking most dinners. I remember feeling a little jealous but pushed it down, telling myself I should just be grateful for the help. The horrifying truth, as I'd later learn, was that she was probably following a lawyer's advice. Build an image as the primary caregiver to win a custody battle. Every special trip was a calculated move on a chessboard I didn't even know we were playing on. It was a Tuesday. I only remember because Tuesdays were my long day, and I usually got home after everyone had already eaten. But that day, a server at work crashed, and they sent us all home early. I walked into a quiet house. Clara was at work, and the kids were at after-school stuff. For a second, I just enjoyed the stillness. I decided to get a jump on some paperwork and went to our home office computer. I needed to print an insurance document, and I remembered Clara had recently scanned a bunch of our important papers to our shared cloud drive for emergency preparedness. The drive was already open, and I saw the neatly organized folders. House deed, insurance, car titles. And then I saw one that didn't belong. It was a folder just called Future. My first thought was that it was for the kids, maybe college plans. Curiosity, not suspicion, made me click. The folder opened, and for a long moment my brain just refused to process what I was seeing. It wasn't a college fund. It was a battle plan. The first file was an Excel spreadsheet named Asset Division. My heart started hammering against my ribs. I opened it. There, in cold, clinical columns, was our entire life, itemized and valued. The house, my 401k, my investments, my salary. Next to each item was a proposed split column. She had given herself the majority of our cash and the house. It was a blueprint for my financial ruin. My hand was shaking as I clicked back. There were more files. I saw PDF statements from a credit union I'd never heard of, for an account in her name only. It showed steady deposits over the last 8 months, funded by cash withdrawals from our joint account, withdrawals she'd told me were for redecorating. It was her escape fund. Then I saw a document named Budget New Life. It was a monthly budget for a single person, with line items for rent on a 2-bedroom apartment, utilities, and even entertainment. She had been planning her new life while living her old one right next to me. But the final, soul-crushing blow was in a subfolder named Consultations. Inside was a saved email chain between Clara and a prominent, notoriously aggressive divorce attorney. The first email was dated almost a year ago. I read the messages, my vision blurring. I saw my wife asking how to protect assets before asterisk filing, how to establish primary custody, and how to get the biggest possible spousal support payment. I saw the lawyer's advice, which mirrored her behavior over the past year with terrifying accuracy. The advice is to gather financial documents. The advice is to become the involved parent. It was all there. a premeditated, calculated plot to dismantle my life. In that moment, the world didn't just crack, it shattered. The 10 years I cherished, the love I believed in, the woman I married, it all dissolved into a cruel lie. I wasn't her husband, I was a mark, and I had just stumbled upon the playbook for the con. Sitting there in the silence of my own home, staring at the blueprint for my life's demolition, the shock started to fade. It was replaced by a cold, horrifying clarity. It was like a dam broke in my mind, and a flood of memories, all previously harmless, rushed forward and rearranged themselves into a grotesque new picture. Every excuse I had made for her suddenly seemed like an act of willful blindness. I remembered a conversation from 6 months ago. Clara sat me down, faking a sudden interest in our finances. She asked for specific details, my income, the equity in our home, and the exact value of my retirement accounts. I'd been so pleased, thinking she was finally taking an active role. Now, seeing the attorney's email advising her to obtain a clear picture of the marital financial landscape, I felt like a complete idiot. She wasn't planning asterisk with asterisk me. She was taking inventory of her target. The financial red flags I'd ignored started waving furiously in my memory. The large cash withdrawals she'd laughed off as money for new. Furniture. I now realized that project wasn't a guest room. It was a retainer for the lawyer she was hiring to tear our house down. Her refusal to make any long-term plans suddenly made perfect, painful sense. The trip to Italy for our 10th anniversary, she kept putting off. "Let's wait until my work is more stable," she'd said. She wasn't avoiding commitment because she was stressed. She was avoiding it because she knew she wouldn't be here. She couldn't plan a future with me because she was already building one without me. Even her day-to-day behavior took on a sinister new meaning. The increased criticism, the little jabs about my habits or my job, I'd chalked it up to stress. Now I saw it for what it was, contempt. She wasn't just annoyed with me, she looked down on me. She'd become so defensive, always twisting my words, making me feel like I was the one with the problem. It was a classic strategy to justify the betrayal she was already planning. The emotional distance wasn't a phase. It was a wall she was building, brick by brick, to keep me out while she plotted her escape. I scrolled through the files again, a cold stone in my chest. I saw scans of our tax returns, which had gone missing from our filing cabinet a few months back. She declaimed she was reorganizing. In reality, she was making copies for her lawyer. All the puzzle pieces were locking into place with a series of sickening clicks. Her new gym routine, the new clothes, the obsession with her phone, none of it was random. It was a script, and she had been playing her part perfectly. This wasn't a spouse falling out of love. This was a corporate takeover, methodical, strategic, and completely heartless. If you're finding this story as shocking as I did, and you believe that actions have consequences, take a second to subscribe to Karma Chronicles. We're all about stories where the truth eventually comes to light. In those first few hours, my gut instinct was to scream. I wanted to smash the computer, call her, and just unleash all my rage and pain. But as the shock wore off, something else took its place. A chilling, unfamiliar calm. It was the calm of pure resolve. She had treated our marriage like a business deal, so I made a decision. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of a screaming match. I wouldn't give her the drama she could use to paint me as the unstable, angry husband. No, if this were a game to her, then I would learn the rules, and I would play to win. The next few days were the most surreal of my life. I became an actor in my own home, pretending everything was normal. When Clara came home that first evening, she kissed me on the cheek, and it felt like being touched by a ghost. She asked about my day, and I told her about the server crash, my voice steady, betraying none of the hurricane raging inside me. Every interaction was a performance. I listened to her talk about her day, knowing it was all a lie. I ate the dinners she cooked, knowing she was probably logging them as evidence. I lay next to her in bed at night, my body rigid, living with the enemy while she had no idea I was on to her. This Cold War was my own private hell. The gaslighting didn't work on me anymore because I could see the gears turning behind it. Her complaints about me being distant were almost funny. It took every ounce of self-control not to laugh in her face and say, "You want to talk about distant? Let's talk about your secret bank account." During the day, I moved with quiet urgency. I went back to the cloud drive and took pictures of every single document with my phone, the spreadsheets, the bank statements, the entire email chain with her lawyer. I forwarded copies to a new secret email address of my own. I documented everything. I spent hours researching divorce law in our state. Her secret plan had given her a head start, but her arrogance had made her sloppy. She assumed I was a fool, too trusting to ever uncover her scheme. That was her biggest mistake. She had forgotten to pay attention to her opponent, and her opponent was no longer the loving husband she thought she knew. He was a man with nothing left to lose and a perfect record of her betrayal. For 2 weeks, I lived a double life that mirrored hers. On the surface, I was the same guy. Underneath, I was taking apart her plan and building my own defense. My anger had cooled into pure strategy. My first move was to get a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, the best one I could find. I took a day off, telling Clara I had a mandatory training seminar. Instead, I sat across from a sharp, confident woman who radiated competence. I didn't just tell her my story, I showed her. I pulled out my phone and presented the gallery of evidence. As she scrolled through the images, her expression shifted. She looked up at me and said, "She's not just planning a divorce. She's planning to obliterate you. Judges take this level of premeditation very, very seriously." For the first time. I felt a sliver of hope. Following my lawyer's precise instructions, I began my counteroffensive. First, I secured my finances, but legally. I didn't hide money. I opened my own separate bank account and redirected my paycheck there. I gathered all of our shared financial records and put copies in a safe deposit box. I changed the passwords on all my personal accounts. My lawyer was clear. Let her deception be the only one on record. We will be the picture of transparency. The next part was harder. My lawyer confirmed that Clara's supermom act was a clear attempt to establish herself as the primary caregiver. So I started being more present, but naturally. I made sure I was the one picking the kids up from school more often. I initiated real family activities. It wasn't just for legal reasons. My kids were my anchor in this storm. Clara seemed annoyed by my increased involvement, which only confirmed her motives. Living this lie was agony. One night, she came home excited about a bonus from work that she wanted to use on our credit card debt. I knew from her secret statements that there was no bonus. It was a lie to cover a transfer she'd made to her secret account. I just nodded and said, "That's great, honey," the words tasting like ash. I was playing the long game. Every fake smile was a shield. She thought she was in control, moving her pieces across the board, completely unaware that I could see her entire strategy. The power dynamic had shifted. She just didn't know it yet. I chose a Wednesday evening. It was painfully normal. The kids were at their grandparents'. Clara was in the kitchen, humming to the radio. The scene was so domestic it felt like a cruel joke. My heart was pounding, but my mind was clear. It was time. I walked into the kitchen and leaned against the doorframe. She looked up and smiled. "Hey, you're quiet tonight," she said. "Everything okay?" "We need to talk, Clara," I said. My voice was eerily calm. Her smile faltered. "Okay," she said, leaning against the counter with her arms crossed. "What's up?" I didn't waste any time. I know you've been planning to divorce me. The color drained from her face. It was the most honest expression I had seen on her in a year, pure shock. She was utterly blindsided. She wasn't shocked that our marriage was over. She was shocked that I knew asterisk. "What are you talking about?" she stammered. "That's crazy." "Is it?" I asked, my voice still level. "Let's not pretend. I know about the lawyer you hired last year. I know about the secret bank account. I know about the spreadsheets dividing up my 401k. I know you've been building a case to take the kids and the house." With each sentence, her facade crumbled. How could you know that?" she whispered. "Were you spying on me?" "You left the future folder open on the shared drive," I said. "You underestimated me, Clara. You thought I was just the clueless husband you could manipulate and discard. You were so busy planning your ambush, you never thought to check if I was still asleep." She just stared at me, speechless. "My lawyer filed the divorce papers this morning," I continued. "You should be served sometime tomorrow." That's when panic turned to rage. "You did what? You can't do that. I was the one who was going to—" She stopped herself, but it was too late. She'd admitted it. "You were going to what, Clara?" I asked quietly. "Control the narrative. Serve me when it gives you the biggest advantage. I know the plan. I read the emails." For the first time, she just looked defeated. The master strategist had been outmaneuvered. I felt no triumph, just a profound, cavernous emptiness. I had won the battle, but my entire world was the casualty. I turned and walked out, leaving her there with the ruins of her intricate, heartless plan. This was, without a doubt, the hardest period of my entire life. If you believe Clara got the karma she deserved and want to hear more stories like this, make sure to subscribe to Karma Chronicles. And now I want to ask you, what was the one red flag you missed in a past relationship? Share your story in the comments. It's powerful to know you're not the only one who has been through it. The aftermath was just as messy as you'd imagine, but the game had changed. Clara's whole plan relied on surprise and me having an emotional breakdown. With both of those advantages gone, her case fell apart. During the legal process, her deception took center stage. My lawyer presented the evidence of her premeditated plot. Her attempts to paint me as distant or unsupportive were worthless against the proof that she had been engineering the divorce for over a year. Her lawyer, the shark, was visibly frustrated as his client's credibility evaporated. Her primary parent narrative also crumbled. The custody arrangement ended up being a 50-50 split. Financially, the court took a very dim view of her hiding marital assets. That asset divvies. Ian spreadsheet she created became a key piece of evidence asterisk against asterisk her. The final settlement was fair and equitable, based on the law, not her manipulative blueprint. She didn't get to leave me with nothing. But there are no real winners when a family is torn apart. This is a story about reclaiming your life. For months, I was just numb, going through the motions. How do you learn to trust again when the person you shared a life with was capable of such cold calculation? The healing began slowly. It started with focusing on my kids, creating a stable, loving home for them in our new reality. It came from reconnecting with friends and from therapy, having a safe space to unpack all the rage and grief. It's been 2 years now. The house is sold. Clara lives in an apartment across town. We co-parent politely, transactionally, not unlike how our marriage ended. The warmth is gone, replaced by a guarded peace. I don't hate her. I've worked too hard on my own healing to carry that weight. But I see her for who she is now, not who I wanted her to be. I've learned that trusting your gut isn't paranoia. It's a survival instinct. And I've learned that you can't control what other people do, but you can always control how you respond. I could have let her plan destroy me. Instead, I chose to be strategic and strong, and to be the author of my own next chapter. The rubble of my old life is still there, but I'm not living in it anymore. I'm building something new on a stronger foundation, one built not on blind trust, but on self-respect. And for the first time in a long time, the future looks like an open road. Thanks for listening to my story here on Karma Chronicles. If you made it this far, please consider subscribing for more true stories about getting the last word. We'll see you in the next one.